computer. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Welcome to our presentation on senses of hauora and wellbeing in early childhood initial teacher education during a pandemic from Aotearoa, New Zealand. Ko mangari te maunga, ko rurangi te awa, ko Ngāti Pākehā te iwi, ko Pauline Bishop toku ingoa. My name is Pauline Bishop and I work at Te Whare Wānanga o Wairaka or Unitec Limited. And I'm a member of this research project.
Tēnā koutou katoa, ko Anari Gibbons taku ingoa, and ngā mihi nui kia koutou. My name is Andrew Gibbons. I'm a lecturer and professor at the Auckland University of Technology, and I work with the early childhood student teachers, and that's in Auckland, New Zealand. So we're going to talk to you today about some work and some research that we've been doing with a wider group of colleagues and partners. It's work that began through a connection with Healthy Families Waitakere, and we'll talk a little bit more about the organisation of the project soon. But we'd also like to acknowledge our other partners, and that includes Open Polytech, Unitec, the University of Auckland, and AUT University.
So a little bit of history of our project. As we said, as Andrew said, Healthy Families Waitakere initiated this project and started discussing, well, we're providing health and wellbeing workshops for teachers and wondered about the uptake of those workshops and wondered how they could access teachers' interests and concerns. So started doing, Healthy Families Waitakere started doing some surveys really of teachers and discovered that actually teachers' wellbeing was of huge concern. And so that sort of began a conversation about 18 months ago, would that be right, Andrew?
Yeah, definitely.
About 18 months ago, yeah. So we raised some questions and we started meeting and discussing what it is we really wanted to do and find out about, and how teachers, student teachers and actually teacher providers, how we all take care of ourselves.
It became very, very clear to us through conversations with teachers who were experiencing the workshops that their own experience of the study of health and well-being and hauora were things that they were interested in experiencing more, and asked us directly why it is that there was for them less attention during their own studies. So this became a question for us as providers of teacher education.
Good, indeed. We had some quite a bit of spent quite a considerable amount of time designing the project and making sure that we were thinking about all of the issues around it. And in the planning, the pandemic emerged. So that was an interesting aspect to our research and how we met, and because initially we were meeting face to face, and of course during the pandemic it was all via Zoom, and that influenced our thinking and the way we engaged. And what we discovered was during the pandemic we spent much more time in whanaungatanga, getting to know each other and connecting and actually developing our own sense of belonging to the rōpū. And this has sustained us during this extraordinary year that we've all experienced. So as a consequence, this is an important aspect of what we've discovered. And so it's now going to be written into our research write-up, I think. Andrew, we're going to be doing that.
Yeah, there are some key themes that have emerged, at this time, really help us to reflect on a shared experience of hauora and well-being, and that it's never a waste of time to spend time with ourselves and with students, taking a moment to breathe.
Yes.
Understanding the importance of having some fun with each other, not as peripheral to the experience of study and the experience of teaching, but as central to it.
That's right.
And it's funny, we talk in New Zealand in particular, we talk about the strands and the principles of our curriculum, and sometimes they can become slightly frayed, and in the moments of stress and trying to jam assessments and get marking done and things like that. So it's been a real important moment to recognise, the anxieties around putting together a research project during lockdowns required us to get together, to come back together. And so it's been an awesome opportunity to work with each other and to support each other through 2 lockdowns. And we can talk a little bit more about that in terms of research design, because one key thing for us in terms of putting together an ethical research project, or guided by the guidelines for ethical research, is to minimise the potential harm for student teachers as potential participants. And this is during a pandemic and during a lockdown, a very important question, because the research itself could be considered to be stressful, asking questions about hauora and well-being when everyone's stress is heightened. So we had to think very carefully about whether or not even to do the research during this time, and whether to put it off, or whether or not this research actually would be an opportunity for student teachers to recognise the support that is intended or is aimed or is aspired to through this kind of work.
I think we often talk about the soft skills of teaching, but actually social emotional intelligence is a key part of teaching. And I think recognising that how the pandemic made people feel, how it influenced their ability to be successful, and how it influences their learning were all part of what we were thinking about. But also how it affected us as researchers. So really one of the things that Andrew and I have talked about is how our meetings to discuss this presentation have been so much more beneficial to us, and personally as well as professionally, in allowing time and space to recognise the influences, the external effects of those influences on our performance as teachers.
Yeah, I mean, in a sense, perhaps what we're doing here is we're advocating for being part of a research team that looks at hauora and well-being as open concepts to dialogue over, because of the benefits of that shared sense of community, and because it provides a deeper layer of belonging that's not located within institutions, but it's located around our shared and common commitment to the experiences of student teachers. So we're caring for each other through the very experience of the project, but in that sense, we're also caring for ourselves. The research here becomes a way of creating those moments of breath, as we said before. So in terms of the impact on the aim of the project, we also then recognised that we needed to come up with a much more let's call it optional or open and complex approach that allowed for participants to be involved in a variety of different ways that made sense to them. And so we'll talk a little bit more about the online survey in a minute. So what we didn't want to do is to just create a brief online survey that then made it feel like we were just skirting over the surface of complex topics. So we've designed a multi-phased approach that will work, hopefully flexibly, with whatever conditions the world puts to us, and that student teachers can enter into the different phases in ways that make sense to them.
And I think at the bottom of everything, or at the top of everything, what underpins our desire to find this information out is our concern for children in early childhood education and their experience of well-being, which is obviously controlled, influenced, affected by how their teachers are feeling as well. So
Yeah.
yeah, I just thought, I heard us talking and I thought, you know, really we need to be, we do underpin all that we do with children, I know. But so these are some big questions that we have considered. We've talked about, we've considered the influences of philosophy and political influences on this whole topic. Whose vested interests in organisational cultures and how that impacts student-teacher experiences. We're also interested in Aotearoa. There's quite a lot of corporate investment in early childhood education, and so that has an impact on the range of services provided for children in Aotearoa. And that we feel that impacts also on teacher hauora and well-being. And one of the big questions that came out of our discussions has really been, well, who advocates for teachers? Who advocates for our early childhood teachers in Aotearoa? We really don't have a clear group of people that are standing to be counted to do that. And so that's a real, I think, even a historical issue that has been ongoing for a number of years. And so as a group of women mainly, obviously men too, Andrew, but as mainly women, we really need to consider, who is advocating for us, whose voice is out there, and how they're being heard by the government and yeah, employers really. I think advocating.
So these are some of the big questions that we would invite you to consider, and we'd love to continue conversations and to grow these conversations. We recognise that they're conversations that are occurring around the world, and they're conversations and questions that will appear in different ways in different contexts and at different times. We definitely want to acknowledge that there are many organisations that do advocate for early childhood teachers, but that this advocacy often appears in quite fractious or hostile environments, and so it's about exploring how are the organisations that advocate for early childhood teachers engaging in their advocacy, and how is that actually impacting on the hauora and well-being of teachers, because at times advocacy can be emancipatory, and at times it can actually be quite discriminatory as well. It can create diversion, it can create difference, and I mean difference in a negative sense, because of course advocacy and difference shouldn't be things that are antithetical to each other. And also recognising, and I think this is an important element of the big questions, that in New Zealand, where we are committed to and obliged to the Treaty of Waitangi, that we need to understand that well-being and hauora are concepts that represent different cultural knowledges, different cultural ways of being, and that they're not transferable or translatable. And so this is also about opening up conversations to understand difference in both cultural, ideological, philosophical senses, and the political senses. So being open to conversations about different perspectives of hauora and well-being that student teachers, that teacher educators will have, and that institutions will have. And so it's also important to recognise that in this project we take seriously our own responsibility for impacting on the well-being of student teachers through, for instance, the way that higher education structures the teacher education programs and how that impacts on the student teachers.
It's a huge area of research and interest, but we're discovering as we are engaging in it, the complexity, but also what is actually physically capable, what we're actually capable of doing. So those are very powerful things. At the moment, we're in the middle of the online survey. We launched it on the 12th of October, and we've had an immediate positive response of over 150 respondents, and that we were quite surprised by that, and that in itself indicates how valued this question is to our kaiako tauira. So I think, Andrew, we've just about had our time, and I just wanted to conclude with, please feel free to contact us. Our email addresses are on the slides, and we'd like to leave you with a whakatoki and some images that make you feel good. Apparently, images of cats make people feel good. E hara takatoa e te toa tahi, engari e toa takatini. I come not with my own strengths, but bring with me the gifts, talents, and strengths of my family, tribe, and ancestors. And that's something that underpins a lot of our thinking and teaching in Aotearoa.
Thank you very much for listening, and we hope to hear from you in the future.